Namaste everyone. Let's start our Wednesday class with some peace prayers. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Parbrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Bhu Bhavaswaha, Tatsavitra Varenayam, Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi, Diyo Yo Naha Prachodayat. अस्तो मा सद्गम्य तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गम्य मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गम्य ओम सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सवीर्यं कर्वावहि तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहि ओम शांति 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 ओम. We are all familiar with the different sects of Hinduism, like Shaivism, Vaishnavism, Shaktism, and Smartism. These are the four sects, or you can classify Hinduism under these four. Shaivism, they worship Lord Shiva only. Vaishnavism, they worship only the Lord Vishnu and Lord Vishnu's different avatars. Shaktism, those devotees worship goddesses. And Smartism, what is that? Smartism is a sect of Hinduism which allows the followers to worship more than one god. Or I should say more than one form of God. It could be a Vishnu, it could be a Shiv, it could be a Ganesh, it could be a Shakti, or anything else also. And under this, the God is a Sagun also, God is a Nirgun also. Okay, so this is the fourth category of Hinduism. But today I am going to talk about, because that was the request, about Shaivism, and even in the Shaivism, the Kashmiri Shaivism. See, Shaivism or Shaiv Sampradaya is one of the major Hindu traditions that worships Lord Shiva as the supreme being. In fact, this is one of the largest Hindu denominations. There are many traditions, sub-traditions. The traditions ranging from devotional dualistic theism, such as Shaiva Siddhanta, to yoga-oriented monistic non-theism. And that's what the Kashmiri Shaivism is. It considers both the Vedas and the Agam texts as important sources of theology. Again, in Kashmir, in Shaivism, there are four groups. So this Kashmiri Shaivism, this is also called a Tantric Shaivism, is just one of them. And let me just give you the names of the other three. Pashupat, Lakolishya, and Kapalika. These are the other three. So since we are talking about the Kashmir Shaivism today, so it is a school of Tantric Shaiv tradition originated in Kashmir. That's why it's called Kashmiri Shaivism. When approximately 700 to 1100 CE, and during that time, Kashmir was the epicenter of intellectual and spiritual life. A lot of great schools, philosophers, they lived there. Kashmir Shaivism devotees believe in all-powerful deity, Shiva. That is a universal shared consciousness. And they say that this consciousness is believed to be within each individual. And similar to a spiritual yoga practice, Kashmir Shaivism centers on revealing the inner self. So that means we have to experience this as connected with the higher consciousness. The central concept of Kashmir Shaivism is that an individual's existence is simply the unlimited manifestation of universal consciousness. This school of Shaivism highly values ideas of free choice, like freedom, and the creative energy contained within each individual. And this Kashmir Shaivism, this tradition was influenced by several Indian philosophical and spiritual traditions, like Patanjali Yoga Sutras, which we are all familiar with. Yogachar is another scripture. Kashmir Shaivism is also called Trik Yoga. Trik means three. So that means worship of Par, Apar, and Apar. So that means it's like a threefold Shiv, Shakti, and Nar. So Par, Apar, and Apar. So it's like a identical to the Trik Shaivism. So some people they are familiar with Trik Shaivism. Some people call it a Kashmiri Shaivism. And the scholars, they say that there are several approaches we can use to practice Kashmiri Shaivism. As monistic, that is like a absolute idealism, or theistic monism, or a realistic idealism, or transcendental materialism. So these are like a different approaches people use. But goal is the same. And all these approaches, they suggest that Chit, consciousness, is the one reality. And that matter is not distinct from consciousness, but rather different aspects of the same reality. So matter means the Prakriti. There is no real separation between God and the world. That's what this tradition talks about. They are one reality. It is unlike the Advaita proponents. They will argue with that. But followers of the Kashmir Shaivism hold the opinion that the world is not an illusion. Because Advaita philosophy says it's an illusion. But Kashmiri Shaivism, they say that world is not an illusion, but very real. True illusion is perceiving the duality or the diversity of the world and holding God and his creation as distinct. They say that is the illusion, thinking that God is separate. Kashmir Shaivism became prominent and major philosophical trend during the 8th or the 9th CE, and both philosophically and theologically until the end of the 12th century. It was very prominent. And how did it originate? As the philosophy of Kashmir Shaivism, it's deeply rooted in the Tantras. So that is like a lineage of the Kashmir Shaivism. They say it begins with the Lord Shiva himself. And the knowledge of the Tantra were lost by the time of Kali Yuga, when Shiva took the form of Shri Kanthanath. at Mount Kailash. And he initiated a rishi by the name of Durvasa. You're all familiar with that name. Into all forms of tantric knowledge, including Abhed. Abhed means without differentiation. And Bhed, with and without differentiation. And Bhed is differentiated. This is also called a Bhairav Tantra, Rudra Tantra, Shiv Tantra. So Durvasa Rishi, he intensely meditated on this. He wanted to have a adequate pupil to initiate, but failed to do so. Instead, he created 3 mind-born sons and initiated the first son, Triambak, fully into the monistic Abhed philosophy of Bhairav Tantra. And that is known as Kashmir Shaivism. Bhairav. What are the concepts in Kashmir Shaivism? The supreme is called Anuttara. Nutra, that is like a ultimate principle in Kashmir Shaivism. It is a fundamental reality underneath the whole universe. Anuttara. There are multiple interpretations of Anuttara. It means supreme. It means above all, unsurpassed reality. See, in Sanskrit alphabet, when we put a, see, it's like a Devangri, they say a, ultimate principle. So Anuttara is identified with the Shiva, Shakti. Shakti is identical to Shiva, the supreme consciousness, Chit, Prakash, Aham, Sapand. So these are some of the terminology. If you read these books, or these tantric books, you will find this. So the practitioner who realized Anuttara is considered to be above the need for gradual practice. That means has reached there, has transcended this lower, in possession of an instantaneous realization and perfection, freedom. And they use the word for that, Swatantraya. So total freedom. So Anuttara is different from the notion of transcendence, because even though it is above all, it does not imply a state of separation from the universe. It's above, but not separate. Another concept in Kashmir Shaivism is Aham. Aham means the heart of Shiva. It's a concept of supreme reality as heart. That's why the meditation on the heart is very prominent in this tradition. So it is considered to be a non-dual interior space of Shiva. And it supports the entire manifestation. There are some supreme mantras about this, and identical mantras in the Shakti also. Another concept in Kashmir Shaivism is Kul. Kul means a spiritual group. It's a very complex notion related to family or group. On various levels, there exist such structures formed of many parts, interconnected, complementary. So people live together also. People feel that they are part of that same group. So they are called families on account of having a common unifying bond, which is ultimately the Supreme Lord. So the practices related to Kul are very obscure, very mystical, and focus is away from such philosophical tinkering, more into immediate experimentation. So very serious practices. They're all considered to form a unified group, a Kul, which relies on Shiva as the ultimate sword. And I talked about Swatantra, the self-created free will. That is another concept. So the concept of independent free will play a central role in Kashmir Shaivism. It is known under the technical name of Svatantra. It is the cause of the creation of the universe. There's a primordial force that stirs up the absolute and manifests the world inside the supreme consciousness of Shiva. See, when you look at the Shiva with a Damru, the world starts. So Svatantra is the sole property of God, all the rest of consciousness, subjects being co-participant in various degrees. But God is the sovereign. Us humans, according to this, have a limited degree of free will based on our level of consciousness. So we have a freedom, but a limited freedom. If we identify ourselves with the Shiva, the consciousness, then we have a full freedom. But if we identify ourselves with the lower, we have a limited freedom. And ultimately, Kashmir Shaivism as a monistic idealist philosophical system views all the subjects as identical. Subjects means the souls, identical. All are one, and that one is a Shiva. They say that. The supreme consciousness. So that's why all subjects have free will, but they can be ignorant of this power. That's what Patanjali said too. Ignorant, avidya. So ignorance also is a force projected by Svatantra itself upon the creation and can be removed only by this Svatantra. So a function of Svatantra is that of granting divine grace. And that's why the term Shaktipat is used quite a bit under this tradition. Shaktipat. They say that spiritual liberation is not accessible by mere effort. You got to make an effort. You have to do the practice, but dependent only on the will of God. So ultimately, it's a God. Shaktipat, God or the Guru can give us. Thus, the disciple can only surrender himself, wait for the divine grace to come down, and eliminate the limitations that imprison his consciousness, like which is bondage. Causality in Kashmir Shaivism is considered to be created by Svatantra along with the universe, the Prakriti. There are great books under this tradition. The first scripture I would mention is the Shiva Sutras. Again, Sutra term we are familiar with, aphorisms. So Sutra, Shiva Sutras. So this is the first great initiate recorded in history of the spiritual path was Vasugupta. He is the one who wrote this, Vasugupta. When? 875 to 925 CE. Vasugupta formulated for the first time in writing the principles and the main doctrines of the system. Vasugupta. So if you want to look up into the detail, if you're interested, go for this name. Fundamental work of Shaivism traditionally attributed to Vasugupta as the Shiv Sutras of Vasugupta, that's called. See, just like Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, Shiv Sutras of Vasugupta. Traditionally, these sutras are considered to have been revealed to Vasugupta by Shiva himself. According to a myth, Vasugupta had a dream in which Lord Shiva told him to go to the Mahadev mountain in Kashmir. On this mountain, he is said to have found verses inscribed on a rock, the Shiv Sutras. And those Shiv Sutras outline the teaching of the Shaivism. So this text is one of the key sources for Kashmir Shaivism. So if you are interested in learning about this in detail, go to the Shiv Sutras by Vasugupta. So this is a work where there's a collection of aphorisms, the sutras, and these sutras expound a purely non-dual Advaita metaphysics. These sutras, which are classified as a type of Hindu scripture known as Agams also. And some times ago we talked about Agam and the Nikams. So these are called Agams. And they are also known as Shiva Upanishad Sangraha. Let me give you a little bit more information about the written tradition of Kashmir Shaivism. So the first Kashmiri Shaiv texts were written in the early 9th century. As a monistic tantric system, Trik Shaivism, as I said earlier, is also known and draws teaching from Shrutis, such as the monistic Bhairav Tantra, Shiva Sutras of Vasugupta. And there's a unique version of Bhagavad Gita where the commentary is written by Abhinav Gupta, known as the Gita Arth Sangraha. So that's where also you find the knowledge and the understanding of Kashmir Shaivism. So teachings are also drawn from the Tantra Lok of Abhinav Gupta, which is very prominent among a vast body of Samritis employed by Kashmir Shaivism. So you can see that there's a bunch of scriptures available if you want to understand, but I'm just giving you a little understanding of this, like only a definition in this particular talk today. So in general, the whole written tradition of Shaivism can be divided in three fundamental parts: Agam Shastra, Sapand Shastra, and Pratyabhijna Shastra. So if you want to just look at it, all those books can be divided into these three. What is the Agam Shastra? Agam Shastra are those writings that are considered as being a direct revelation from Shiva. Agam. So they came from there. These writings were first communicated orally, so just like the Vedic writings also, from the master to the worthy disciple. And they include essential works on the, there are some Netra Tantra, Mrigendra Tantra, Shiva Sutra. So there are several books on that, but it's Agam Shastras, a lot of them. Then Spand Shastra, those are the main works of the Spand Karika of Vasugupta again. And there are many commentaries about that too. Out of them, two are major importance: Spand Sandoha. So these are the commentaries that talk about the verses of Spand Karika and Spand Nirnay. Okay, so there's a complete text about that. And Pratyabhijna, these are the Shastra or the writings mainly about the metaphysical content. And due to their extremely high spiritual and intellectual level, this part of the written tradition of Kashmir Shaivism is the least accessible for the uninitiated. Because, see, just like the Upanishads, they are so subtle, the writings are so deep, average Hindu doesn't even know about it. Even if they read it, they don't get it. The same way, this Pratyabhijna, so hard to understand. But Pratyabhijna means recognition. That's what it means. The Sanskrit word Pratyabhijna refers to the spontaneous recognition. So that means a sadhana has taken the person to that level where there's a spontaneously recognition of the divine nature, which is hidden in every human being. So that's why it takes some certain level of sadhana to reach there. And the most important works in this category are Ishwar Pratibhigya. Ishwar Pratibhigya means the direct recognition of Lord. And under this tradition, that means Shiva. Shiva identical to our own heart. Shiva Drishti, this is another devotional poem written on multiple levels of meaning. Shiva Drishti. So, I mean, you can see that these rishis, these yogis, how much work they have done. Prominent sages of Kashmir Shaivism. Abhinav Gupta is one of them. All the four branches of the Kashmiri Shaivism tradition were put together by the great philosopher Abhinav Gupta. Approximately 950 to 1020 AD. There is a book, The Divine Light of Tantra, that is a very important for the tantrics. They get a lot of information from there. This work is in verses, majestic synthesis of whole tradition of monastic Shaivism in this one. So Abhinav Gupta himself provided a shorter versions in prose also, which he called Tantra Sar, the essence of Tantra also. Because sometimes we don't understand truly what Tantra means. See, just like a yoga, the term yoga, these days, what do people think? Few asanas, they are yoga. That's how the term Tantra also has been misused, misimplied, and misunderstood. Technically, Tantra really means weave or loom. That's a Tantra. Those are the esoteric traditions of Hinduism. And later on, they became tradition of the Buddhism also. In the middle of the first millennium CE onwards. The term Tantra also means any systematic, broadly applicable text, theory, system, method, instrument, technique, or practice. So later on, the Tantra word got misused and misinterpreted. But originally, this is Tantra. Something we use, some technique we use to reach up, not to go down. A key feature of this tradition is the use of the mantra, and commonly known as mantra marga, or it's called a mantra yan. Yan means a vehicle. Use the mantra to raise your consciousness up, or it's called guha mantra also. So all these books, they are written so that we can use that knowledge to uplift ourselves. There's another prominent sage of Kashmir Shaivism, Jairat. From 1150 to 1200 AD, he added his commentary to Tantra Lok. A task of great difficulty was his lifelong pursuit. See, these great philosophers, great practitioners, they just devoted their whole life into this, practicing it, writing it, and they left it for us if we are interested in learning and if we want to move up. He provided more context, numerous quotes, clarifications, without which some passages from the Tantra Lok would be impossible to understand. See, just like a Bhagavad Gita, we need the commentaries of the Bhagavad Gita to understand some of those passages, or even the Patanjali Sutras or Upanishads. So the same thing happens in this tradition also. Let me give you the 4 schools of Kashmir Shaivism. There are 4 schools. First one is called Krama. The term Krama means progression, gradation, or succession. So that means the spiritual progression happens gradually. Krama. Rishi Patanjali used that word also. He called it a Krama Mukti. If you look at some of the verses of Yoga Sutras. So it's like a gradual refinement of the mental processes. There are layers and layers of vasanas on our mind. Gradually we can remove it. Or successive unfoldment taking place at the ultimate level. That's Krama. In the Supreme Consciousness. And this Kram school is an integral part of Kashmir Shaivism. It is also an independent system, both philosophically and historically. Kram is significant as a synthesis of Tantra and Shakti traditions based on the monastic Shaivism. The most distinctive feature of Kram is its monistic dualistic, which is called a Bhed Upaya. Discipline in the stages purposely to spiritual realization. It is said that in practice, Kram employs the dualistic come non-dualistic methods. Okay, Bhed Abhed. Yet in the underlying philosophy, it remains non-dualistic. So it's almost like we know that we are separate right now. We feel separate. But ultimately, in the absolute form, we are one. So it employs those methods to just take you up there, where you feel the union. So Kram has a positive method aiming at forming a synthesis of enjoyment, the bhog, and illumination, the moksha. Okay, so while we are here, bhog, because senses are given to us, sense objects are given to us, but never forgetting that ultimately, ultimate goal is not a bhog. We should not drown into the bhog because ultimate goal is the moksha. So that is a krama, like a slowly, gradually, you keep on moving up. And the second school of Kashmir Shaivism is Kul. Very important school of Kashmir Shaivism. Kul, that's a Sanskrit word. Kul means a family. Or Kul also means a totality. Kul. This is a tantric, they call it a left hand school par excellence. Kul. And here Shakti plays a paramount role in the school. The Kul teachings make the skeleton of Tantra Lok and Tantra Sar. And the third school is Spandha. Spandha system is introduced by Vasugupta and usually described as vibration, movement of consciousness. Okay, and I'm sure you feel that movement when you sit in the meditation, that vibration inside you. Spandha. So Abhinav Gupta uses the expression, he says some sort of movement. So this is what he says, some sort of movement, to imply the distinction from the physical movement. See, we are familiar with the physical movement. We move something with the hand, but when we see that physically the leaves are moving, car is moving, we are moving. But this Spandha is rather a vibration or a sound inside the divine. It's like a throb. The essence of this vibration is the ecstasy. And I'm sure when you are in a deep meditation, you feel that you are moving. And most of the time, outside people, they don't even see you moving, but you think you are moving. That is Spanda. So the central tenet of this system is everything is a Spanda, vibration. Both the objective exterior reality, the outside is objective, and the subjective world, the interior also. So nothing exists without movement. Otherwise also we say that everything is moving. If it doesn't move, it will perish. Everything is moving. So nothing exists without movement, yet the ultimate movement takes place not in the space or time, but inside the supreme consciousness. So it is a cycle of internalization and externalization of consciousness itself, relating to the most elevated plane of creation, Shiva, Shakti, Tattva. So in order to describe the connotations of the Spanda concept, a series of concepts are enumerated, like self-recurrent consciousness, unimpeded will of supreme consciousness, supreme creative energy. So the most important texts of this system, the Spanda, is the Shiv Sutras, Spanda Karika, and Vigyan Bhairav Tantra. So if you're interested in learning more, that this is just an introduction to this great tradition. And the fourth one is Pratyabhigya. Pratyabhigya. The Pratyabhigya school in Sanskrit literally means spontaneous recognition. It's a unique school. It does not have any upayas. Upayas means the means. There is nothing to practice. The only thing to do is recognize who you are. So that means the practice has been done way before when you reach this Pratyabhigya. It's almost like if you want to enter into a PhD program, you don't learn the alphabet again or the basics again. You start from the top. So Pratyabhigya, there's no upaya at all. You sit and you recognize who you are. So this means that actually it is called anupaya, this Pratyabhigya, anupaya. That means without means. So this school thrived until the beginning of the Kali Yuga. And eventually it was lost due to a lack of understanding of the school. So that means that it is so subtle. It was meant to be only for the practitioners who reached up there. And there were none. If there's no student, then there's no school. School is for the students. So it became unknown. Kashmir Shaivite master Somnand revived the system a little bit in the 8th century. But even now, there are not that many students of this school. So just remember that Tariq and Kashmir Shaivism, there's no real difference between these two. At least take this from here, from today's talk. Just another name by which the tradition is referred, Tariq, threefold science. So the ancient tradition of Kashmir Shaivism is a non-dual Advaita school of philosophy, which takes as its source the 92 tantras of the Lord Shiva. So there are 92 tantras. This includes the 64 monistic Bhairav tantras, 18 mono-dualistic Rudra tantras, and the 10 dualistic Shiv tantras. So The reason I'm giving you this information that you can understand that how vast the knowledge is and how deep the knowledge is. So, Pratibhigya system. So, in summary, the Agams are the basis for Kashmir Shaivism. And it started from Kashmir, but it spread westwardly and southwards also. In Western India, it was known by the name of Veer Maheshwar Darshanam. And in South, it was called Shuddha Shaiv Darshanam. So the name gets changed too. See, just like even our yogasanas, people use different names. Shoulder stand and the downward dog. Our yogis gave different names. Tree pose, Sivrikshasa. So names change when the knowledge gets transferred somewhere else. So according to this tradition, Shiva is the only reality of the universe. Shiva is infinite consciousness. He is independent, eternal, formless, secondless, omnipresent. Shiva is the subject and the object. So that means outside also is a Shiva alone. The experiencer and the experienced. The world exists within consciousness, according to this philosophy. And how did Shiva created all this? He created by the mere force of his will. Sankalp Shakti. Karam, material cause like Prakriti, Maya, which produce illusion, forms, etc., are not admitted in this system. God makes the world appear in himself, just as objects appear in a mirror. When we see something in the mirror, the object itself is not affected by that reflection. So he is not affected by the object of his creation, just as the mirror is not affected by the reflected image in it. He appears in the form of souls by his own wonderful power inherent in him. So God is the substratum of the world. His activity, spand and vibration produces all distinctions, according to this philosophy. And Shiva is a changeless reality. Another name for him is Chit, Anand, Ichha, Jnana, Kriya. These are like chief aspects. And bondage is due to ignorance, Agyana. Because we think we are finite. We think we are the body. We have forgotten our identical reality, which is part of Shiva. And the whole world is unreal apart from Shiva. It's all Shiva. And Pratibhagya, recognition of the reality, is all that is needed. All that is needed for attaining the final emancipation. When the soul recognizes itself, it is God, it rests in the eternal bliss of oneness with God. That's all. There's nothing more. It's almost like we have forgotten and we have to remember. So Vasugupta wrote the Shiv Sutras, taught it to Kalata also. And then later on, Shiv Drishti and other scriptures were written. So we got to just remember that if we are interested, if we are philosophers, sure, you can study all those books. But if you just want to have a little knowledge of it, that's why I just put this together and gave it to you. So let's end it over here. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Visheshyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you very much.